Mike, a warm welcome to the show. Do you think we'll ever tackle the migrant crisis, or is it here to stay?
Well, it's gone on for long enough, and the Conservatives have clearly spent 12 years wavering on this and choosing gimmick policy that doesn't even work and completely failed. So if we continue to have a Conservative government, there's no way we're going to fix this problem. But we need serious policy, not just headline-grabbing gimmicks, which is all we've seen so far. And it is a complex problem. It's not fixed just with one solution. But I'm confident that a Labour government, and particularly with what Keir Starmer's been saying recently, would fix this problem.
And what would Keir Starmer do that's so different, Mike?
So there's a number of policies that we're starting to push forward. And by the way, I'm a former soldier and former National Crime Agency officer, so I'm well equipped to help deal with this in Dover. And one of the big policies that we're looking at pushing at the moment is the introduction of a dedicated cell with the National Crime Agency, which is funded to solely focus on this issue. So they'd work upstream with the French and other European partners to smash the crime gangs so that it will stop people even leaving France and coming over. And that's just a part of the problem. Once they get here, what we've seen with the Conservatives is massive backlogs. It's just another part of backlog Britain. And we will speed up that processing so that those that need the help get it and those that shouldn't be here are returned.
However, if Labour are so serious about tackling the migrant crisis, why did they not back the Rwanda plan, which, Mike, for all its sins, is certainly aimed at being a deterrent? Mike? OK, we've lost Mike. We're going to Mike. Did you hear my question?
Sorry, I dropped out for some reason. Can you ask the question again?
Absolutely. We'll work with the vagaries of your broadband connection. If the Labour Party are so serious about tackling the migrant crisis, why did they not back the Rwanda plan, which, for all its sins, was aimed at being a deterrent to what is essentially the trafficking of human beings?
Because it's a costly gimmick. It was never going to work. The fact is, the moment they introduced this, they said it as a deterrent, but actually the numbers coming across went up. So it's a complete failure. And why would we back something that's never going to work? We need sensible policy. OK,
I think we've got ongoing issues with Mike's line, but that's not a problem because Ann Widdecombe is waiting in the wings and chomping at the bit. Ann Widdecombe, Labour would do a better job of tackling the migrant crisis, says Mike Tapp.
Yes, and then he outlines a whole group of policies which, frankly, are just nonsense. First of all, the definition of madness is making the same mistake time after time and expecting a different outcome each time. We paid 55 million to the French, and what have we got from it? An increase in the number of migrants leaving their shores. So now we're going to pay them 80 instead of 55, and we expect a different result. Now, the essence of this, as I've said ad nauseum on your programme, is deterrence. If we don't send out a deterrent message, they will continue to come here, and it doesn't matter how much we pay the French, they're not going to stop them. So what you have to ask is, what should be the deterrent? And I have advocated for the last 20 years, that what we had to do was to detain all new asylum seekers in secure reception centres, not send them to hotels, not let them disappear into the underground economy, because that's very easy to do in this country, but put them where we know where they are, so that those who are genuine we can identify much more quickly and give a proper package to, but those to whom we are going to say no, we know where they are, and therefore it will be much easier to return them. And if there are blocks on returning them, they stay in detention. Now, nobody is going to pay £10,000, £15,000 to a human trafficking agent for that. And if we don't get a deterrent message out there, Mark, it doesn't matter what we do, we're not going to succeed. You've got to stop them coming. And all that we've heard from the candidate for Dover is what to do once they're here. I want to stop them coming.
And Ann Widdecombe, what about the Australian idea, which appears to have been successful, which is a policy of refusal to process any asylum claims on the part of anyone that's entered the country illegally?
Well, your problem with that is that you do get a very small number, and I stress very small, number of genuine asylum seekers who do not want to be seen, who do not want to be heard, who will enter the country by clandestine means. Now, but there is a very, very small number of those. As a general policy, I think it's right to simply say, if you have arrived here without the right documentation and by the right routes, terribly sorry, you can't come in. But that still leaves us with the challenge of returning them, and we have to keep them in secure conditions until we do return them. And as for Rwanda, and well, just let me mention Rwanda. Of course it's right that it's not a deterrent at the moment, but that's because it hasn't happened. The moment that you actually get a plane load on its way to Rwanda, that's a deterrent.
Interesting stuff. Now, Mike, let me ask you about the Albanian situation. Of course, Albania is a wonderful country. It's an ally of the UK, but it's not exactly war-torn, is it? So what would Labour do with regard to Albanians entering the country illegally? After all, it's a territory which is more peaceful than the Isle of Wight.
Well, firstly, I think we need to be asking questions in Albania as why so many young men are looking to leave there when it's not a war-torn country, as you said.
Is that our problem, Mike?
Sorry, say again.
Is that our problem, to self-reflect as to why Albanian men are coming to the UK? Is that our job to worry about that?
We should certainly be working with international partners to figure out the problem rather than sticking our heads in the sand. But when it comes to the Albanians coming over, Anne might be comfortable singling out nationalities and types of people so that they're on receipt of hate crime on the street. I'm not comfortable with that. What I am comfortable with is speeding up the processing of those that are coming over so that those that shouldn't be here are deported and those that should receive the help they need. If we get the process right and sort the Home Office out, then these problems will start solving themselves. I'm not into this dog whistle policy which feeds into extremism and racism. I've worked in counter-terrorism. I see how this can develop into dangerous rhetoric, and we must be careful with that language.
However, Mike, as I've mentioned, no ill will to the great people of Albania. We've got many thousands of fabulous Albanians living and working in this country, making great lives here. That is, of course, that is what this country is all about. But nobody that's Albanian should be entering this country illegally. Surely that's an open and shut case of no, no, no.
Look, as I've said, the way of dealing with this is getting the Tories out, get a Labour government in that's serious on this issue, controlling the borders, which I've explained we will do efficiently rather than with gimmick headlines, and getting the processing sped up, because there are people that need our help and we should provide that. But of course, those that shouldn't be here should be returned. There's no point in these gimmick headline-grabbing policies such as Rwanda, or Anne's talking about locking them all up. It doesn't work. Yes, it might trick some people into voting for the Conservatives or perhaps some of the more extreme parties, but it simply doesn't work. If we have sensible politicians who actually care about the country, then we will fix this. And Labour has that. I've served the country in Iraq and Afghanistan. Keir Starmer's served the country. A lot of these Conservatives only care about themselves and their mates.
Mike Tapp raises an important point, Anne, which is that the Rwanda plan has not kicked in yet, not a single flight, and it's hysterically expensive. And Mike could easily argue that a Labour government couldn't do a worse job than this current Tory outfit.
Well, they certainly will if they're asking themselves, as Mike did, why are young men leaving Albania? Now, the answer is because they can earn a lot more over here than they can earn in very low-wage economy in Albania. So what are we supposed to do about it? Are we supposed to send money to Albania to pay their workers more? I mean, honestly, Mike, that is the most ludicrous argument I've ever heard.